Today on Life Talks, we're going to be joined by Mr. Manners. Are you old enough, Josh, that in the newspaper column, there was a Miss Manners column? Like, you probably don't remember this. There was like Dear Abby and Dear Ann Landers.
I'm barely old enough to have actually personally read a few Dear Abby columns.
So Miss Manners was somebody you'd write a letter to about some kind of social difficulty, and she would, in very proper English, she would
I feel like this was old-fashioned when I was a kid reading this.
It was.
I feel like everyone felt like it was old-fashioned in the 80s when I was reading this, right?
And even in the 60s when I was reading it. So welcome to an old-fashioned episode of...
But the point is there's good things that we want to apply into our modern lives and teach our kids these things. And
So last time we ended with just simple ones. Saying please, saying thank you, holding the door open for others, how to shake hands. And I demonstrated, my father taught me how a man's supposed to shake, where you hit the webbing, you turn in, you look firmly, or you shake the hand firmly and you look them directly in the eye. I practiced that with my sons. I actually have mentored multiple young men over the years. And I would do things like teach them how to tie a full knot with a real tie, not the clip-on ones. I would teach them how to shake hands and how to stand at appropriate times. And the reason for that is, again, what we said last episode is good manners generally don't offend anybody. I mean, you may get some, heckling from your friends, but again, I'm going to do this. Some of you old goats listening to this, there used to be a show called Leave It to Beaver.
Yes.
And there was this kid with impeccable manners. His name was Eddie Haskell. And Eddie always presented himself to the adults as just Mr. Got it together, so polite and so forth. And as soon as the adult turned their back or left the room, he was an animal. He was coarse and crude and mocked whoever he had just been polite.
This is like an allegory for the church. This is like how we are on Sunday mornings versus the rest of the week.
Sometimes we can be that way.
Was that too deep? I'm sorry. Let's go. Moving on.
But good manners are always a great reference point. So we're going to continue my list today. Here we addressed a little bit in the last one, but being a gentleman. When you're near a lady involves certain responses that we ought to have. And for a young man, they're protective. And for a young woman, I believe they're a compliment. I don't do something protective for a woman because I think she's incapable of caring for herself.
Right.
I'm wanting to show her value and honor and protection.
Right.
Now, I understand in today's mindset, in today's culture, that there will be some who interpret this as being toxically masculine or even privileged or condescending or in some way. And, if someone does not want me to show them deference, I'm not going to force it on them for sure.
Right.
But at the same time, if I'm going to err on that, I'd rather err on being polite to someone. And by the way, sometimes when you're polite to someone, they appreciate it and they didn't realize they were going to appreciate it.
Yeah.
They're shocked. Wow, it's been a long time since somebody held the door for me.
Right.
I mean, I feel that way. And, I have people now holding the door for me because I'm perceived to be old. And I am both very grateful and I want to slap the snot out of them for I can get that door, you young whippersnapper. But
and now you're kind of getting it.
Exactly.
Why someone might not like it.
But the fourth thing I would say is being a gentleman could involve walking down a sidewalk in the correct way. And I still to this day do this with my wife.
What does that mean?
When I'm walking down a sidewalk and we cross the street, I switch sides so that I'm always walking on the side nearest the curb.
Yes.
So that if somebody were to be coming careening into the curb and I saw it, I would push her out of the way and I would take the impact.
Yeah. You're also probably easier to see. Isn't there also at a practical level, like for those of us who have a shorter spouse?
Yeah.
I'm almost a foot on my spouse. I am an easier visual target for even like Tesla AI, cameras or whatever. But yes, for sure. It's the same reason why I feel like I imagine this is normal where like most married couples, they've ended up they have a side of the bed. And I feel like the men pretty much always end up with the side of the bed closest to the door, right? For like the same reason, right?
Well, when you're my age, it's side closest to the bathroom.
Okay, fine. But until that point, like I feel like that's like a normal thing, and it's got to be coming from the same.
Yeah. Well, and that kind of goes into one of the things I was taught is that when you enter a room or a house, if it's dark, the man goes in first. If it's light and you can see everything, the woman goes first, and it's a safety issue.
Okay, I understand the first part. I don't understand the second one. Why is it better for the woman to go in first if it's lit inside?
Okay, I mean, this phrase will remind you. You always say, after you. It's considered a courtesy to let someone proceed.
Sure, but what's the safety part of it?
Like if there's some burglar.
In case someone's like following you guys?
No, there's no safety issue on letting her go first, except that it's lit and you can see what's awaiting you.
You're letting her go inside. You are presuming that she should go inside first, assuming it's safe. And if it's dark, you're saying maybe it's not safe, so I'm going to go in first.
There's a boogeyman waiting to whack you on the head.
Thing,
yeah,
right.
yeah. And even navigating stairs, I said last time, I was taught a man goes down the stairs in front of a woman, and he goes up the stairs behind the woman in case she should slip. And I've literally caught my wife a couple of times where she would miss a step or slip, and she would go one more step and run into me.
Okay, I'm going to ask you an awkward question. Like let's dive into this one because I don't think I just don't spend that much time clearly walking up and down stairs next to women where I
have steps in my house.
So I'm just imagining. Okay, so like I'm imagining if I was at like. I'm thinking of like a West Wing walk and talk for some reason. That's what's in my head. Sure. Like if you're like around like, if you're having like you're walking around government buildings and you're having a work conversation with your female colleague and you're walking alongside each other the whole time because you're talking the whole time. It's West Wing style. Aaron Sorkin wrote it, so you're going to keep on talking. And then steps happen. Do you kind of like make it so now she's behind you as you talk?
In those cases, usually in those kind of public settings, the staircase is wider.
Yes.
And one of two things, always give her the handrail.
Nice.
Always. I always go to the center.
So that's like the compensating.
Yeah. So if it's a narrow staircase, for whatever reason, I'd still go down together. If somebody comes up, then I would step in front of her.
Yes.
Unless we were going up, then I'd step behind her.
Yes.
And then in some occasions, like when I'm with my mom, or if I was next to somebody elderly, and by elder I mean a lot older than me,
right?
I offer them my arm.
100,
at least. I offer them my arm, and if it's wet or if it's icy, I just offer them my arm.
Yeah.
Okay,
so this is interesting. So what? So I promise I will let go of this thing. But like, what is the driving principle there that in the case where you guys are having this conversation, you don't you continue going side by side? Is it like what is the difference there?
To allow the conversation to continue while you're traversing.
Because it just seems like it would be rude or something to suddenly interrupt
talk to the back of my head while I'm a gentleman. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And the weird thing is that a lot of these, once you kind of get the basics down, they become impulsive.
Yeah.
I just don't even think about it.
Yeah.
And at times, not thinking about it causes me to offend people who are thinking, but they're thinking the opposite I'm trying to do. But anyway. All right. Number 5. Standing when an adult, a lady, or a superior walks into the room.
I'm bad at this one. I am not consistent with this. I probably ought to be, but I have not. Yeah. I was not trained well enough on this.
And this happens frequently because I'm, not a huge public figure, but a lot of people know me that I don't necessarily know them.
Yeah.
And they'll come up to me at a restaurant. Now, unless I'm fully engaged in cutting my steak or something where it would be awkward, I always stand out of respect, shake their hand, and often I'll say, please don't stand. And then I respect their wish. I was at lunch today. I was just working on my phone on something. A guy from our church comes by and said, hey, Pastor Dan. I did not know who he was, but I didn't stand up. It's another dude, So, but if it had been, it's interesting. We have an intern here who I love. And one of the reasons I love interns to be around is so they get to see things that they don't learn in a classroom or from a book. And so I was going to do some things down at the preschool. So I went with the director down to the preschool and had him follow me. He followed me down there, and we were doing some business. But as we walked by, all the kids come running over, Pastor Dan, Pastor Dan. We're in the middle of a conversation. It's pretty important. We're talking about some equipment and so forth. I immediately stopped the conversation, and I started talking to the kids. Yeah. And I let them, touch their hands through the fence and so forth. And after everybody had got satisfied, then I continued the conversation. Yeah. I didn't even think about it. Yeah. So the intern asked me when I got back, he said, I think I learned something today. I just want to make sure. And he said, I noticed how you address the kids. And I really said this. You ought to never walk by a kid. You just shouldn't without acknowledging them.
Yeah.
They're short, they're loud, and they sometimes smell bad, but they're children.
Yeah.
And when you just act like they don't exist, I don't think that's a message that any of us really want to send. So you're never too important to acknowledge a child.
Yeah.
See, and again, to me, this ought to be almost reflexive for folks.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's not. And so sometimes I think it's a good thing for us to say it out loud, which is why I'm doing this episode.
Yep.
But for instance, if you're a kid, my parents taught me when an adult approaches you, stand.
Yeah.
Because it shows respect.
Yeah.
To this day, if a lady and I'm seated, like somebody comes into my office, I stand.
Yeah.
And if they're disabled or if they're a superior, for instance, if the chairman of the deacon or elders in our church were to come up in my office, I would stand and shake his hand and say, welcome, I'm glad you're here.
Yeah.
He's in my space.
Yeah.
And so I show deference to him by doing that. And so I would say to the young person who's wanting to get a job and you're sitting in an office or at a board table for an interview, that when the person comes in to interview you, stand up. Don't be a jerk.
Yep.
I promise you, there are still some people on this planet that will make a decision. If all other things are being equal and you stand up, look them in the eyes and shake your hand versus you sit there and say, hey,
Right.
there's going to be a difference in whether you get the job or not.
They come in,
Yeah. And I try to teach my kids, one of the worst fights I ever had with my son, he was about 14 or 15, and he really hated meeting new people, and he was trying to get a job, and I made him put on a tie.
Oh.
Which, in hindsight, was probably a little old-fashioned. You don't need a tie to work at McDonald's, but he wasn't going there. But anyway, I said, you'll separate. I got a job one time because I wore a suit to an interview.
Yeah.
I got the job.
Yeah.
And they told me, you got the job because you wore a suit. It tells us you're serious.
What kind of job was it?
It was a shoe salesman.
Yeah.
And I had to wear a tie to sell shoes back in the 70s and 80s. But and my son's like, I am not going in. It was the biggest test of wills, the earliest test of wills we ever had, and he won. He would not get out of the car, and I wasn't going to, shove a 14-year-old out onto the sidewalk with my foot. We went home. We still talk about it today.
See, I wonder if this is a great example of how maybe all of these rules need a little nuance. You know what I mean?
Because they do, absolutely.
Because in that context, I think I'm probably with your son. I don't know if I love that, him refusing a direct order or whatever, but it might have been bad for him career-wise to walk in with that tie or whatever. And so anyway, but
ironically, he sees that differently today.
Really?
Because he's a manager at a cinema. I have to be careful about identifying it. Yeah. He has to hire a large number of young people. And he told me it's very difficult in this generation because they could be scheduled and they just don't show up and they expect that to be, well, I was busy. It's tough. Yeah. But he would tell you that if a guy walks in with a button-down shirt or a collared shirt, if a young lady walks in and she's not wearing holy jeans and she's wearing a blouse rather than a t-shirt, they get the job first.
Sure.
Yeah. So I mean, while I don't think you need to wear a suit and a tie, again, dressing up rarely offends anybody.
Right.
I mean,
let's be true. You wouldn't go to level of appropriateness for that thing. I think that's the point. I feel like even movie theater employees tend to still maybe wear a tie or a vest at least or something like that.
A lot they don't at his.
Whereas it'd be really weird if you come up to McDonald's or even Chick-fil-A. I mean, as nice as they are at Chick-fil-A, they're not wearing ties, and that would be weird if they suddenly started wearing ties, right? And so
it needs to be appropriate to the job you're performing. For instance, I think it would be really weird to go get a roofer's job or a plumber's job wearing a suit.
Yeah.
At the same time,
you should not get that job.
I do think you shouldn't wear a t-shirt that has pot leaves on it.
Yeah,
because you're basically announcing, I may not be completely sober when I come to work for you, but you're going to have to live with it. So,
or at least that you are so dedicated to whatever that message is that you want to wear.
I wouldn't wear a MAGA hat
this meeting, right?
to get a job at Starbucks.
I wouldn't wear a Christian shirt or a pro-life shirt to a job interview.
Yeah,
just like
that's a good episode we ought to talk about sometime. Is is the whole nature of Christian market.
Just don't
get me started.
Just you be the message.
Yes.
It's lazy to just be like, I'm just going to get a corny Christian shirt and let
from
that
Dollywood. They got
and
tons
now,
of them there.
And then I can say that I was like a fan. I'm probably being too down. Maybe
no.
probably
we are going to do an episode on that someday. Okay, I'm going to go to the next one. Giving up a seat at transportation or in a waiting room or where there's a limited amount of seating for someone who's elderly, pregnant, or disabled.
I do this.
Yeah. Now, in my world, that also includes women.
Yep.
Like when I'm on the shuttle bus on the way from the airport to the terminal, and people are getting in.
Like this is exactly the example came to mind. Is this the only times when we actually have to give up our seat anymore? Is when like public transportation and like at airports?
Yeah, or doctors' waiting rooms. I've done it a little bit there.
That's a good point. Yeah.
But and again, you say, well, that's old fashioned. Okay, I can live with that. There's a lot of things old fashioned I like. But and often they'll say, no, I'm fine. If they do, I sit back down.
Yeah.
I'm not going to, I'm not going to arm wrestle them.
You sit there. That would be chauvinistic.
I mean, particularly if she's pregnant or elderly, I'd say, no, please, would you? I'll appeal to them. Please, go ahead. It's not a big deal. But when a young person, this is why I love the fact that at Life Fellowship, we actively invite our student life kids, which are in grades 6 through 12, to be greeters, to work at the cafe, to do things publicly. Because I got to tell you, I notice when I'm greeted in an appropriate fashion by, and these kids give me a tough time. They do call me boomer. I invite that. I do the silly thing like I described last episode by using their language or whatever. And I want that, but I also like respect.
Yes.
I love, there's a young man that stands at the door. His dad has taught him how to shake hands. And I mean, he's drilling. When I walk off to him, He gets me in the tractor beams of his eyes, and he walks and he sticks his hand out and shakes it like I know what's going on there, and I think it's cool. Yeah, I do. It impresses me. Yeah. Never. I'm going to continue to rant on that.
I like it.
The next one is this: looking people in the eye during a conversation.
Yeah.
That's just you'd think that is common sense, but now. Also be aware of this. Some people who are on the spectrum.
See, this is exactly where I was going to go.
Some people who are on the spectrum.
Good job.
Some people who are
You didn't even need me to say it.
Yeah. But, these are the kind of conversations I think it's really healthy to have with your kids in a car.
Yes.
What do you do when someone does not fit the norm? Yeah. What do you do when you open the door for someone who is upset with your gesture?
Yeah.
You yield.
Yeah.
You don't cause conflict.
Right.
You're not making a statement.
Right.
You're just trying to be
nice.
courteous, trying to be nice, trying to be kind.
Yeah.
And those are not bad words. Those are virtuous words.
Yes.
The scripture teaches us. So we've had a situation. There's a guy in our church who's an admiral. He's an admiral. And
currently or former?
No, I was just at his installation within the last year. I was part of the installation.
Currently an admiral in the Navy?
Yeah.
Wow.
And
good for him.
Yeah. And he's the kind of guy that I guarantee you has taught his kids this list and then
yes, probably
10 times 10.
Yes.
He's
one Von Trapp singers. Like he's probably got a whistle.
And I know his kids. His kids are great. But he's a buttoned up guy. Yeah. He wears a suit and a tie to church, and he may be on some weeks the only person. Now everybody's going to know what I'm talking about. But he may be the only person in the entire. But he doesn't do it for us. He does it for him. He does it because this is who he is and we believe. But here's the thing.
Or like maybe is it maybe a reflection also, like for some people it's just like dressing up at church feels like the only appropriate way to go to church.
Oh yeah, he was trained that way. He grew up like I did. I mean, we went to the same places, and we grew up in a culture that said you show respect to God by the way you arrive at church.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no question about that. But here's the thing I absolutely love about this guy.
Yeah.
If somebody walks into our church who's outside of the norm, by being heavily tattooed or being, their hair's in dregs or they've got 20 piercings or their hair's bright blue or whatever.
Yeah.
If I see them, I intentionally go up to see them.
Yeah.
But he will knock me down if he sees them at the same time.
Oh, I love
He's
that.
the man there. This man literally picks up homeless people off the streets, particularly if like a homeless teenager, puts them in his car, gets them a place to stay, feeds them, and makes an offer to mentor them to help them get a job.
God
I've seen this.
Bless this
He's
man.
amazing.
Wow.
And the reason I thought about it is because there was a situation just within the last several weeks that this guy came to church, and I saw So I'm over at the guest center and I'm like, I need to talk to him because I'm afraid that, I don't want anybody ever walk to the church that doesn't look like, Joe Baptist. And I'm serious. By the time I got there, he cut me off and he was there 10 minutes later. I finally gave up because I had to wait and see him another week. But here's the interesting thing. He came back. The guy's been coming back. And I honestly believe that this is something that exudes from someone's character when they think of others rather than themselves. And too often we just don't do that. Yeah. So looking people in the eye, giving them respect, apart from those who fall outside of it, then I think that's a good habit for us to form. Here's another one, and I think this is really important. We talked about this a little bit off air, but swearing and cursing.
Yeah, okay, so this one's going to be a little more convicting for me.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up on a farm, all right? And people all the time, they'll drop a little swear word and say, oh, I'm so sorry, Pastor. I'm like, oh, I've never heard that one before.
Right.
Or, boom, you're going to hell.
Right.
You
didn't curl your
One
toes.
of my favorite stories, I was in a grocery store. This is 20, 30 years ago. I was in a grocery store. Some guy walked up, he pats me on the shoulder. I turn around, he grabs my hand. He's a big old bruiser. And he said, Pastor Dan, I was at your church last week. And he's a country boy. I said, well, good. I'm so glad you were. He said, I just got to tell you, man, that was one hell of a sermon.
I love that. This is hard for me because I feel like that feels so real.
It is.
Cool.
And I never said a word to him. I said, thank you very much. I hope to see you next damn week. No, I didn't really.
I wish you had, though. That would have been so hilarious.
I don't even know how to use damn correctly. I don't even think it fit there.
You did it so well. That was perfect. That would have been so good.
Yeah. No, but
oh, man.
But honestly, again, I'm very legalistic on this in my own life in a weird way. Yeah. Coarseness, because I grew up on a farm and you're always stepping in stuff and all kinds of stuff, that has never been an issue. Yeah. But the name of God and the sacredness of the name of God is something that I'm like fixated on. Yeah. You've never heard me say, oh my God. I guarantee you, you have never heard me say that unless I was in the depths of prayer, wrung out, and I don't even remember being in that situation. Yeah. But I don't even say gosh and golly and gee whiz. I don't even use the substitutes.
You know what? I feel really bad. I actually still do that on this podcast sometimes when I don't catch myself.
It doesn't register me because 99% of the people I know do that. My dad was capable of coming as close to cursing without actually cursing than any human, because my dad didn't get saved until he was 20.
He made it an art.
In his 20s, and he could cuss the bark off of a tree until he got saved, and he was convicted about it. But, he still had that old nature he was fighting, and I never heard him actually curse, but like something would go wrong, like a cow would kick him or something would fall off the, we were working on, and he would say, God bless America. And that pause between word one and word two, I would always say, this is the day Dad's going to do it. He's going to do the big one. He's going to curse. And he never did. But he could use every slang word that he wanted to. Yeah. So I overthink everything. And I'm like, well, if I'm using a slang word, why don't I just use the real word? Because, in effect, it's the same emotion that drives it. And, there's just a student, but I don't judge other people. I certainly don't. And if you're listening to me and you're a part of my congregation and you let one slip, don't even bother. Okay. Don't even bother. I don't care. I'm not your priest and I am not God. So, just relax. I'm relaxed. It's really not a big deal. But at the same time, there used to be this kind of thing that you didn't, again, sounds old fashioned, but you didn't curse in front of women.
Right.
You didn't talk crudely. Yeah. Guys in locker rooms were beasts.
Isn't that still a thing to some extent? Like, I'm not saying no one talks rudely around women. I'm saying isn't it still a thing that men feel like the fact that locker room talk was this phrase thrown around, especially like when the Access Hollywood tape came out and
with
the first Trump campaign. When that thing,
which I'll just say, I think that was beyond locker room. That was beyond locker room talk.
Yes, fair. But that phrase was getting thrown around a lot then, and it seemed like then isn't that a tacit acknowledgement that guys are talking? At least some guys. I don't know these guys. I've never spoken like this, but some guys are talking a certain way around each other that they're not speaking around women, if else because they're being less transparent around women because this is the way that they actually talk. So I guess I wonder.
To me, it's not a matter of transparency. It's a matter of respect.
Yeah.
I mean, there are things I'll talk about with guys that are crude. I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, I'm a pastor, but I'm also a human. Good grief.
Sure.
And so if I'm with a group of guys,
Yeah.
if I'm with a group of Zoomers, I may not participate, but I want to connect with them where they live.
Yeah.
And Zoomers really don't feel constrained verbally a lot of times.
The Overton window has very much changed when it comes to language.
They will say things that blow my hair back, and I try not to act surprised.
Yeah.
But actually, for me, that's important that they feel that way, because then I can have important dialogue with them on other matters without that interfering.
The fact that they're willing to curse around you, like, honestly, might be some of the best evidence that you're really good at this.
Well,
because they're willing to do that around you. If they will have those conversations with you, and if they're willing to curse around you.
Well,
I'm not saying they should be willing to say anything around you and just like let everything go.
And I'll tell you one thing. There is one thing I just won't tolerate. If you use the Lord's name in vain, I'm stopping you there. It's just, I'm really, really uncomfortable with the F-bomb. I really am, as part of probably my generation or so forth. Today, it's a noun, verb, adjective, adverb, prepositional.
It fits everywhere.
It fits everywhere. And as pious I am, I knew people when I was growing up that instead of using that F word in that way, they would use a racial term in that very way. And so that was as wrong as using the F word. I would say perhaps more
way
wrong.
Worse.
Yeah, because it's about an actual human. But regardless of all of that, again, one of the things one of multiple things that I'm frustrated with our president is I believe not only is he teaching us bad grammar every day, but he has, by publicly swearing as much as he does, he has reset the bar for what is acceptable in public. Now, I happen to have a friend who worked in the George W. Bush administration. Apparently, George had some of the most colorfully inappropriate language ever.
Did he? I didn't know this.
Including the F-bomb, which he used with apparently amazing fluidity. But he didn't in public.
No, he didn't
in public. Now, I don't know that
total Texan cowboy, polite.
Now, perhaps the worst swearer in American history, if you study, was Lyndon Baines Johnson.
Yeah,
he was a Texan cowboy, and apparently he was fluid in
several
several languages
if he
of
was
cursing.
Only cussing at you.
Well, yeah, because
and not exposing himself.
Yeah, he would use the toilet with the door open and having meetings, which is a level of crudeness that I can't comprehend.
Dynamic guy.
Yeah. So, but I would simply say this again. People are not going to be offended at you for not cursing, but some will be offended for cursing. And again, as ambassadors of Christ, I would, and I do this as part of my discipleship with someone. I say, okay, now let's talk about what does the scripture say about our speech? Well, let our speech be seasoned with grace and salt. All these different things that we see in the scripture. I think that's an appropriate time to address it. I don't think you want to come to church, honestly. Many people are not going to come to church and say, and have me publicly in a context use swear words and vulgarities. I don't think so. At the same time,
at least not on a regular basis.
Right. Well, I'm never going to find out the difference. I will say this though. When I'm talking to a group of men, I will probably innately, but also intentionally coarsen to the degree that I think will connect with the guy who's the construction worker, the guy who was in the military.
Yes.
I had a son in the Marines, and let me just tell you, nobody can cuss like a Marine can cuss.
Yes.
And so
I mean, that Navy admiral, I guess, might come and fight you on that.
No. Well, actually, Marines are a branch of the Navy. But,
you're right.
Well, we used to say cusses like a sailor. That was an expression.
Sure, right, exactly.
Like Job's turkey. But
so I wonder, should I come back at you with some potential counter examples or things? Do you want to try to because I come from a little bit of a different place, but I don't know whether I'm in the wrong place or not. So
it's good for a conversation.
You want to mess with around? Okay, so so there's a thing, I love the example you just gave. So that would be one of probably many examples I could give of context where I intentionally sometimes curse, is if I'm trying to connect with someone who I'm expecting to be difficult to connect with because they see me as coming if I'm doing an outreach on a college campus in front of a pro-life display, then they just think that I am some more bearded version of Ben Shapiro.
Yeah.
So I have to try to help them understand quickly, I'm not what you think I am. I want you to be intrigued by what I think. And so I'm intentionally bringing up some of my more liberal views that I have because I'm trying to find some common ground that'll make them, wow, Shapiro doesn't think that. No, he doesn't.
Right.
So I'm finding that. And I will sometimes curse too at the level that they are because one, I'm not actually I'm never betraying my own conscience. My conscience might be too deadened. I might have a badly formed conscience when it comes to cursing, but I don't think anyone would ever violate their own conscience. So I'm not violating my conscience when I do it. Try to connect with them, help them see that I'm different than what they think, and we end up often having a better conversation. Sometimes I use it just because I listen to so much stand-up comedy, and I actually do believe that sometimes you can make a sentence or a joke funnier with a curse word. I actually do not believe it's true that you can always make things funnier without those things. So
I would probably challenge you on that, because I think, I was always taught that cursing is the uneducated man's way of communicating.
Yeah. So as I guess I'm not technically educated. Just everyone assumes I'm very educated. As someone who reads
very
a lot, as a very smart guy, I can definitely make very compelling arguments without curse words. I wonder if sometimes we should be communicating those arguments occasionally with curse words.
Yeah. So I would come back at you a couple of things. First of all, number one is this. I think there's clearly some things in Scripture that we need to be aware of.
Yes.
And that always becomes, like our due north.
Yes.
And that is how can sweet water come out of poisoned water, basically what Scripture says when it regarded to mouth, that you shouldn't be blessing and cursing with the same tongue. Okay. The second thing that I would also note that says Scripture says we will give account for every word that we use. Yes. So we do need to be thoughtful.
Yes.
We do need to be thoughtful. Number three.
Real quick, context question. On the blessing and cursing thing for that first one, in cursing, is it talking there about cursing like swear words, or is it talking about like cursing people? Is that where you were going?
Well, not really. I thought you were going somewhere until the last second.
No, I'm wondering, what did it mean?
What?
Don't
that
bless
is
and curse with the same
great
mouth.
question, and I would love to offer you my opinion, but that is not good.
No.
So I'll have to look that up.
We'll add that one.
Look that one up, because
it would make sense.
We're getting ready to end land this plane, and it'll be an easy place to go back to.
True.
But the number three is this. This may surprise you a bit. Is define cursing.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah. So, and I'm not a moral relativist. I don't believe, even one of the arguments I would make against yours is I'm not a big advocate in most cases that the end justifies the means.
I agree with you.
Yeah. So I would say, well,
so I don't think
will
I'm
they respect me by
wrong.
saying blankety blank blank blank? I don't know. I don't know. But here's the other thought of it. When Paul says they are but. And the word, that depends on what version you're using, but usually it's as dung, or my works are as dung. The word he uses in the Greek would be the equivalent for us of the S word.
Right.
Okay. So, and again,
there's a lot of cursing in the Bible.
Right. And so why is it acceptable for most of us, myself included, that we will drop a similar four-letter word that begins with the letter C, but I won't use the same a word that
talking
means
about the soft C word, or the
hard C.
The hard C word?
Yeah. Crap. Okay.
So that's not what the hard C word. There's a different, much worse C word that most people, when they hear C word, they think of.
Well, yeah, but I'm trying to make a reference to the S word.
Just making sure we're on the same page.
There's never an appropriate time to use that other C word. Yeah. But if you're saying crap, or you're using the S word, then is your intention different? Well, no. Is the definition different? Nope. Then why is it acceptable for us to say A but not B?
Yeah.
And those kind of things, are the things that always get me in trouble when I was growing up.
Yeah.
Because it sounded like I was being argumentative and actually I was being explorative. And I really want, and I don't have that answer today.
Yeah.
I mean, you won't hear me using the S word, publicly around everything, but you may hear me use the C word. You know why? Because in my home, the C word was used by my dad, but the S word never was.
Yeah.
So that became my standard, which is, I think, a really important thing.
Yeah.
And that is what you do in moderation, the next generation often will do in excess.
That's a fair point.
The level of language that you use in your home and that you tolerate from your children will become matched and probably exceeded in the next generation. So do we not have a responsibility to set as high a standard as possible so that we don't contribute to the decline of proper and appropriate communication, behavior, and all kinds of things?
I don't like this argument very much.
Yeah. Well,
because what I want is to be like, okay, well, what I want to find is, what is the perfect target? Like, because I never want to curse and have it be actually wrong when I'm doing it, right? Or swear or whatever, you know. So I want to, like, what is the actual bullseye? Whatever wrong thinking I currently have, I want to figure that out and then be doing whatever that is, which is different than being like, well, what is that? And then I'm going to go a couple of levels more conservative because I'm thinking about the next generation.
Yeah, I don't know that I would. That's not what I was trying to communicate.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah. Though I have had that argument used on me.
Okay, so
Definitely.
clarify.
Yeah.
That's
so
definitely
what
I
I'm simply saying is when we, for instance, this. Oh, you're going to hate me for this one. I promise you're going to hate me for this.
Okay.
But I think there's a biblical truth behind it. During the 80s, you remember the stinking. I was going to say stinking, but that's actually another word for, a curse word. So
I don't even know what
you should ring a bell every time I use a curse euphemism because sometimes that's way there. That's better. Yeah.
Those are the three I've got right now.
Yeah, that first one's definitely not.
Okay.
But what would Jesus do?
Yeah.
Do you remember those bracelets?
Yes.
That is imprinted on my mind, not because I have ever, in any time in my life, worn a WWJD anything.
Yeah.
And I kind of hate that kind of schlocky Christianity.
Yeah.
But I think at my core, I really believe that. I believe that becomes a standard that calls me to greater care in the navigation of my choices.
Okay, so coming right back at you. So I'm
for
with
it.
you. But I wonder if maybe Jesus, if he didn't actually occasionally use curse words, I wonder if he actually would have in some context. Because he was so good at emphasizing things that were deeply wrong that no one else was emphasizing as deeply wrong.
My argument to you would be this. I think that Jesus may have, like Paul, used words that today in our whatever it is, Victorian, post-culture, that we would say were potentially coarse or crude or perhaps even a curse, like the S word. Is that a curse word? A curse to me always has something about deity to it. It's a vulgarity. To me. So, but would Jesus use vulgarities? He might use vulgarities in the terms of what was culturally appropriate in that context. But I don't think, we know for sure that he never crossed the line. So
sure,
but it's not recorded. So we're going to have to speculate on that. Right. So again, part of my way of thinking, which is again, old fashioned and founded in fundamentalism, is that if there's a line, my objective ought not be how close can I get to the line, but I should understand why the line is there and respect it.
Yeah.
And I was always taught, just don't cross the line.
Yeah.
And because I'm a troublemaker, whatever, I would say, well, why is the line there? Who put it there? Yes. How long is it going to last? And should it really be there?
Yeah.
That to me is an important skill we ought to teach our kids. And then even in cursing, I think that it's appropriate. Yeah. I think when we sit down with the first time your kid lets one, fly, that we need to stop and say, let's talk about that, Johnny. Yeah. Let's have a conversation about that. When my kids are adults, sometimes they say things, but quite frankly, I sometimes say things to them I would never have said when they were 8 years old because they were in their formative years. Be an example of the believer. Again, Paul said that to Titus. And so I think that we need to be conscious and aware of it. We did not get this anywhere done, but this is like going to be the longest episode in Life Talks history.
I've got another thing to say though.
Write it down and we will open next episode and you'll be so excited to hear what Josh is going to have percolating
here's a teaser.
In his mind and ready to just get me put in my proper position. But one of the reasons I love to have Josh is because he thinks and he questions and he challenges. That's what we're to be doing as we know the truth of the Word of God and we interpret life based on that. That's what we do at Life Talks. We're always grateful you joined us. Thanks again for listening to us here at Life Talks.